Hi everyone, it's Laura here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video I'm going to show you how to create a Halloween card using stamps from the Wizard of Oz series by Impronte d'autore. The inspiration for this card comes from a card that was created by Cristina. She is a fellow design team member at Impronte d'autore, and she had used one of the stamps from this Wizard of Oz series by Impronte d'autore for a Halloween card a few months ago. So with her permission, I am showing you my version of a Halloween card using these stamps by Impronte d'autore. I combined them with the Fawn costume party stamp set, from which I used images like the pumpkins and the candies. And I will list all the products that I used in the blog post that you will find linked in the description box down below. These stamps are available as clear stamps in Italian and as unmounted rubber stamps in English too, so if you're international and you like this style, which by the way I find amazingly beautiful, you can check them out on the Impronte d'autore shop. I have arranged my images on my stamping platform. This is a new entry in the Impronte d'autore range of products. It's called Stella, which means star in Italian by the way, and it allows to stamp your images repeatedly and with precision. Thanks to the springs that are on the hinges of the stamping platform, you can stamp stamps with different heights, so from clear stamps to foam-mounted rubber stamps. The ink I am using for my stamping today is VersaFine Onyx Black ink, because I want to do some coloring with my Zicklin Color Rio brush markers. I am working on some Bristol Smooth cardstock by Strathmore, and off camera I will also be heat embossing my images with clear embossing powder. As you can see, I am using my stamp platform to do some repeated stamping, because for my scene I wanted a lot of candies and a lot of pumpkins, and this is something that is very easy and quick to do with a stamp platform like this. For my coloring today, I used my Zicklin Color Rio brush markers. These are water-based markers that you can blend with each other and with water. And in this video, I'm not going to show you the entire coloring process, otherwise the video will be really long, but I will just share the coloring for the Tin Man. What I am doing is I am using a dark marker to create my shadows, and shadows help to build dimension in your images. So I am starting with laying the darkest marker in the areas where I think the shadows will be darker. I am then coming in with a lighter marker and I am blending that dark marker out toward the highlights. And finally, to create my lightest shade, I am using a wet paintbrush and I'm blending everything out. And the fact that I have heat embossed my images makes my coloring a little bit easier and a little bit faster, because the heat embossing produces some raised lines, and these lines will keep the water and the pigment confined in those areas, which basically means that I don't have to worry about not painting adjacent areas one after the other, and I can just color in my images quickly. As I said, I will not show the entire coloring process, but for now I will play a little bit of music while I finish coloring in the Tin Man, and I will be back when it's time to put our scene together. and these are my images all colored in. For the stamps by Impronte d'autore, I have the coordinating dies, so I just die cut those, but for the Lawn Fawn costume party, because I do not have the coordinating dies, I cut everything by hand using my cutter bee scissors. For my card base, I cut 3 panels out of some Bristol Smooth cardstock by Strathmore. The largest one will be the one for my sky, and that measures 21 centimeters by 9.9 centimeters, and this is 1/3 of an A4 sized sheet. The other 2 panels are also 21 centimeters wide, but they are not as tall as my sky panel, because there I will basically die cut a grassy hillside and a fence, and I don't need those panels to be as tall as my sky. Now, because these panels are longer than my dies, in order to have a continuous hillside, I need to do some extended die cutting. So the first step is to simply run my paper with my grassy hillside border by Lawn Fawn through my die cutting machine. And then what I will do is that I will position my die again, basically adjusting it as close as possible to the edge of the die cut that I already have in place. And then I will run everything through my die cutting machine. And this allows me to obtain a grassy hillside of the length that I need. I will repeat the same technique with my fence die, but this time I also have to do some partial die cutting, and this is because this die also cuts on the sides and not only the border of the fence. So what I did is I ran it through my die cutting machine, and I showed you a little bit ago that I made sure that my right edge of the die was hanging off of the cutting plates of my die cutting machine, and then I die cut this first part of my fence. What I'm doing now is I am aligning the die once again with my die cut, and when cutting this other portion of my fence, I will make sure that the left side of my die is hanging off of the cutting plates of my die cutting machine. I am positioning it carefully, and then I will die cut this once again. And if your die cut is not 100% precise, it's very easy to fix any border that didn't get die cut perfectly using a craft knife. At this point, all my landscape elements were ready, and I could start doing some ink blending. For the panel for the sky, I am using Distress inks, and I chose Picked Raspberry, Wilted Violet, Faded Jeans, and Black Soot. I am trying to blend these colors, having the Picked Raspberry at the bottom and the Black Soot at the top, and I am blending them with each other until I get a nice and smooth gradient. I am starting with my blending sponge off the sides of the paper, and I'm bringing the color inwards so that I don't get harsh lines. And every time that I'm blending two colors with each other, I will go back and forth between the two until I get a smooth gradient. To add some interest to the sky, I am creating some stars, and for that I am using first the silver color in the Gansai Tambi 36 pan palette, and then to add a little bit of variation, I am also adding some white stars using the white pan in the same watercolor set. For my grassy hillside, I am using peeled paint and forest moss. And again, I am keeping the darker colors towards the bottom of my panel and the lighter ones towards the top, which means I am adding forest moss in the lower part of my hillside and peeled paint on the top part of my hillside. I repeated the same steps for my spooky fence, for which I used pumice stone and black soot. And now I can finally go ahead and start putting my scene together. I first glued my spooky fence behind the grassy hill panel, and then I'm going to adhere both to my sky. I played around with the arrangement of my images a little bit, and once I found a composition that I liked, I actually went ahead and started gluing everything down. And I think that when creating scene cards, it's really important to overlap the different elements between each other to create dimension and more interest on the scene. One example in this case are the pumpkins that I tucked behind my grassy hill border, and also the little bundles of candies that I created here and there. Another thing that adds interest to your scene is when your characters are interacting with different elements in the scene, like for example this monkey over here, which is sitting on the spooky fence and holding a candy jar. And finally, the fact that my pumpkins and the candies are adhered at different heights on my grassy hillside creates a sense of perspective, which enhances the feeling of depth. I quickly drew in some shadows under my characters using my BG markers. These are the Spectrum Noir markers. And then I heat embossed with white embossing powder the sentiment from the Fawn costume party, which reads Trick or Treat. I used one of the dies in the Fawn Double Slider Surprise die set to cut a banner around my sentiment, and I glued it to the top left portion of my card front. And here you can have a look at the finished card. I also decorated the inside of my card using another stamp set by Impronte d'autore and the sentiment from the Fawn costume party that reads Treats of course. And that finished off my card. And that's it for today. If you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments below, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. You can visit my blog for the full list of supplies, and I'll catch you guys soon with the next one. Ciao!